Let's continue our discussion about the new inspector palette in FileMaker 11. Again, I really love this feature. Even though it has nothing new, I love how it organizes everything into one dialog for you. You can quickly go ahead and set a field or other object with all these settings from one area rather than going to the menu several times and looking at several dialogs to do the number of things you do to a field. You might want to set a text. You might want to set some field behavior, some alignment. It's all very easy to do from one dialog now. And so once you get used to this, I think you'll like it a lot. So let's cover the things we haven't covered so far. And one of those areas is behavior. And the first thing here is one of my favorites, browse mode and find mode. So what this allows you to do is say, I don't want this field to be entered in browse or find or both. So we're going to set it on some fields here that I think make sense. For instance, in list view, I typically don't let people edit. Typically in list view, what you do is it's just a view where you can see stuff. And so I like to set these fields so you don't allow entry and then have a button that takes you over to form view for actually doing data entry. It's up to you, but this is how I'm going to show it. So in other words, if we go back to browse mode, we can get into these fields still. Let's go into layout mode. We'll shift click all these fields, and then we'll say not allow in browse mode. We'll go to browse mode, and now you can see we can't get into those fields anymore. I can't tab into them. The only thing that can get into these fields is a script. It can override that. But if I do go into find mode, you notice that I now can get into these. So I've prevented people from doing data entry here, but not from doing find from here. So I like that a lot. So we'll go back to browse mode. Actually, we'll go back to layout mode is what we'll do. And let's do some other settings here. Select entire contents on entry. I also like this feature a lot, because a lot of times when people are trying to do data entry past the initial entry is completely changing what's in there. So if we go ahead and select all this text here, right there, all these fields are all selected now, we can set them all at once. And this is another great thing about this inspector. It's easy to set all these fields at once. So we'll come in here and say select entire contents on entry, go back to browse, and you see when we click in there now, it highlights the whole thing. You can click a second time to get the cursor. And that's different from the shipping field. If we had something in here like Database Pros also, if we come out and come back in, our cursor simply goes in there. So it's just another option. Do you like this or not? If you like it, implement it. If not, don't. So let's move on down here. Go to next object using tab, return, or enter. And it defaults to tab. That's because when you're in browse mode and you tab, you go to the next field. Well, a lot of people from Excel, who've been using Excel for a long time, will go into a field, type into it, and then hit the return key expecting it to go to the next field. What will happen is you'll put a return character into that field, and then they'll go, oh yeah, it's a tab. Hit the tab and leave that return character in there. Well, this is one way to combat that. If you type return in here, in fact, we should probably take all these fields right now, set them all to return. We'll go into browse mode, click into this field, and then hit the return key. It actually goes to the next field, as well as the tab key does the same thing. I personally don't like this. I would prefer different methods, which we're going to cover later, which allow you to set options to take that return out or warn them and validate it, saying you can't hit a return. I'd rather train them rather than just allow them to keep doing the wrong behavior, because then it takes a lot more work on your part to go back and set every one of these layouts to this. So I typically, but again, all these options are for personal preferences. Then we have this checkbox for include field for quick find. If you don't want a field to be searched using the quick find feature, remember it's up here, we'll go into browse mode. If you don't want it to be searched on this layout, you can set all the fields or one of the fields or 5 of the fields all at once to prevent being searched. So there's some great features in there. There's also do not apply visual spell checking. Well, if we go into browse mode, that refers to this. If I click into this field, and that's not a good one because John and Mark is spelled correctly, but you see on Osborne, it underlines it with red thinking it's a spelling error. Well, you might want to set the first and last name fields to not have that underlined because you can't really spell check people's names. So you can set that on a field by field basis so it doesn't put that red marker up there. So we'll go back into layout mode. And then you have last here is the set input method. So if we click on a field, we can set it from the automatic default to synchronize with field's font. That basically says translate the keyboard commands to something like Japanese. Again, if you're not using Japanese or some other type of Asian type of text, input, maybe you have one or two fields where we want to do Asian text input, well then you don't need this feature. And then we'll go down to data formatting. This is a great one. It allows you to format your fields to say something different than what's in there. So let's take, it's really better to show you. If we take the date of birth, right, and we come down here and click on it, and you can see that it already knows it's a date field, so it doesn't let you do number formatting or time formatting or graphic formatting, because we're going to go over all these eventually. We can't go over all of them right now, but eventually we will go over all of them. But it knows it's a date field, so this is the only one you can get to, and we can change it to whatever types of formats we want. So let's say we choose this one right here. Let's go back into browse mode and see what we have. We can see now that we have it written out. Maybe you like this format, maybe you like another one. But also realize that when you click into it, it reverts back to the data entry version, the way that you should do data entry. And when you click out, it masks it. So it's really not changing the data, just masking it. So you can choose all kinds of formats. You can even choose custom if you want. And that allows you to change it to whatever format you want, the day, the month, all these different choices in here. And you'll have to play around with these. You can change the separators and all that kind of stuff. I usually don't do this because you can usually find what you want up here. So I'm going to change it back to as entered for right now. And let's go ahead and look at some other types of fields here. Let's look down actually at our text block here, which has merged fields in it. You can actually set a text block to have data formatting. In this case, it can have all of them. Now it has dates and times in it, so you might want to set the date and the time, and it will apply both of those to any merge field in that text block. And you can't go in and highlight it and assign them separately like this. You can't say I want this field to be, have this time format and this field to have that time format if these happen to be both time fields. You have one for the whole text block, but still you can separate your text blocks to make that work if you want. But it's a great little feature. Remember, you can apply it to fields and text blocks. So again, we're going to go over all the other features such as number formatting and time formatting, as well as graphic formatting in the upcoming sections. But they all basically work like the date settings that we just saw.